that highlight how to shape your career in finance and how this can be done at Investec. My name is Imani Williamson. I'm your host for this webinar, and I work in People and Organisation, which is our HR function at Investec. I also lead the Multicultural Network, which has allowed me to meet colleagues across many different areas of the bank. And I'll be chatting with three of those colleagues today that work in finance roles about their career paths. So we aim to provide you with what we hope is practical advice that inspires you to consider a career in financial services. But before we get into that, I'd like to tell you very briefly about Investec. So we're founded in South Africa over 50 years ago, and Investec has grown to become a leading international bank and wealth manager. And we were recently named one of the top 10 financial services employers in the UK by the Financial Times. Investec was founded by 5 entrepreneurs, and that entrepreneurial spirit is evident across our UK business today. And we encourage all our people to think out of the ordinary, and in return, we provide an environment for them to thrive. We are deeply invested in our people and our clients, dedicated to our core purpose of creating enduring worth. And it goes without saying that inclusion and diversity are key drivers of our success. So we're going to move into our introductions with my three colleagues. So first up, we have Margaret Ziminu, our Head of Operational Resilience and Operational Continuity in Resolution.
Hello, everyone. My name's Margaret. I've been with Investec for just under 8 years. I currently work in the London office, and previously I was COO of our India business out in Mumbai, and I'm glad to meet you all.
Thank you, Margaret. And next we have Victor Ovenshi, an associate in our Fund Solutions private equity client group, who's been with Investec for almost 6 years.
Hi everyone, my name is Victor Venci. I've been with Investec for almost 6 years now. So I joined the bank in 2019 through the corporate investment banking graduate scheme in our London office. I spent around 15 months rotating through different teams in the graduate scheme, so such as infrastructure finance or syndications. And now I'm part of the UK Fund Solutions team, where I help with the origination and execution of different fund financing solutions and strategies. So from supporting private equity funds, infrastructure funds, real estate funds. Yeah.
Thank you, Victor. And finally, I'd like to introduce you to Cam Hull, our Head of Financials in FinTech PLC Advisory and Corporate Broking at Investec. She joined us just over a year ago.
Hello, my name is Cam. So I work in the listed clients group. I work with companies that are either listed or planning to list at some point in the future. My role entails providing clients with financial advice, and this is at the C-suite and investor relations or board level, and it also includes executing M&A and equity transactions for these clients. Through my career, I've also worked in a senior management role at a fintech startup, and I've helped private companies raise growth capital, and I'm based in London.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. I'd like to get into the questions now, and I'll begin with you, Margaret, by asking you what inspired you to pursue a career in financial services? Because I know that you didn't actually start your career in finance, you started in a different sector.
Well, honestly, I didn't choose financial services. I landed in financial services, and I started my career in the big 4 firms. So I worked for Deloitte and PwC, and after that, I actually joined an airline, and I worked in aviation in multiple finance and operations roles. And then I kind of decided I wanted to do an MBA, and because I was doing my MBA, I needed a job in the city. And I decided, okay, I need to find work in the city so I could actually attend my MBA classes in the evenings after work. Initially, when I was looking for a role, I really struggled. And I'm going to be honest, most recruiters wouldn't recruit me. So they looked at me and said, you have no recent financial services experience, although I had worked in financial services in my time in the big 4. And luckily, I knew someone, one of my friends who kind of, knew the organization, and said, look, why don't you go and talk to Investec? And initially I said, oh, I'm not quite sure. And then initially I landed speaking to Investec, and I found myself back in financial services, and I've been here for 7 years.
Nice. It's always good to have a good friend. Thank you. Cam and Victor, you both went straight into financial services. So what was the attraction for you? Cam, I'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So for me, at school and at university, I loved maths. I loved accounting and economics, and I was in South Africa at the time, and the M&A activity and corporate activity around at that point was really very interesting. It was quite active, and it was a world I really wanted to be in. I was fortunate enough, I began my career in the early 2000s in the graduate program at JP Morgan in South Africa, and I focused on multiple products as part of the investment bank. And there was an opportunity quite early on for me to move to London, which I eagerly accepted because it was different, it was new, it was exciting. It was also a centre of financial services, so I moved here and continued my career in financial services.
Thank you. And you, Victor?
Yeah, my journey into financial services started with a social mobility program called Arrival Education. So they run different education programs which support the development of young people's careers. And I got into that program around the age of 14. So during that time, I was connected with professionals at Investec to develop my core skills such as teamwork and communication. And just through those experiences and those networks, that sparked my interest in finance. So, and I also in school, I enjoyed a lot of economics and geography. So in how I was drawn to the finance industry's dynamic nature, I could merge my interest in global companies, financial markets, and how they impact people day to day. And also, I just saw the fast-paced environment of my mentors in the financial services, and that just further motivated me to pursue a career in the financial industry.
Nice. Thank you, everyone. And moving on to focusing on actually getting a job, you know, the process obviously starts with recruitment and interview. So, can you describe your journey from the interview process to your current role, Victor? Sorry, back to you.
Yeah, my interview process was quite extensive actually. So as I mentioned, I started in a corporate banking grad scheme, and I applied during my second year at university. The interview process involved up to I think 5 to 6 interviews, and it was quite unique because Investor kind of focused mainly on your passion and personality rather than your technical skills, which other banks don't tend to do as much. So I also had interviews, group interviews with various people that were interviewing, and interviews with the execs of Investec, which was quite daunting at the time. So after initial screening, I secured a position on the graduate scheme and then had to rotate across the bank, so in the middle office and the front office. And this exposure was great because I could see how the middle office connected with the front office. And then after 15 months of that rotation, we had to pitch once again for the desired desk that we wanted to be at. And that was in front of all the execs again. And I pitched for the fund finance team, which I successfully got. So yeah, it was very extensive, but it was worthwhile.
Nice. And Cam?
Yeah, so for my current role, a friend and an ex-colleague had recommended Investec and the team here to me. And I think this is core to it. This is a people's business. Having a personal recommendation from somebody that I trust gave me that extra push to investigate this opportunity fully. Through the process, I met lots of people across the business. It involved about 6 or 7 different sessions, which may seem like a lot, but it was very much a two-way process, to figure out whether we could work together, whether there was fit, and I really valued it.
Thank you. Um, and one of the things people talk about a lot in business world is networking, and you kind of just touched on it there, Cam. And of course, BYP is a great example of an external networking organization. How has your relationships and your networking influenced your career, Cam?
Well, building long-standing relationships is the core. It's the core of my role within investment within the investment bank. It's been very interesting along the years, just watching colleagues and clients move around on their own career journeys, but always staying close to them. These networks that I've developed over the years have, provided me with access to a diverse group of people who've, helped me through navigating my own career at different points, as I have done for many others.
And Margaret, what about you?
I've had a similar experience, and I would say that relationships are the bedrock of everything and everything in your career. And I think what's really important about relationships is they determine who's going to vouch for you in a room you're not in. Who's going to think about you when there's a new role, and who's going to help you when there's a challenge? And I think it's about looking at every transaction as a relationship and actually building that social capital. And once you have that social capital, it's big in your career because it helps you propel your career. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. And Victor?
For me, I would say networking is absolutely crucial for my success at Investec. So from day one, I was encouraged to have coffee chats with a lot of colleagues on the floor. Like, there's no one colleague I did not have a coffee with at the end of my rotations, so I could, develop and understand how the bank's structured and build more connections. And these interactions have proved invaluable again. Maybe to leverage from different colleagues. If there's a deal I'm working on and they're working with another desk, I can go to that colleague on that desk, ask them about that company, and they can give me this information as well. So it's really provided invaluable insights. So yeah, networking is the most crucial.
Yeah. And I guess it's quite easy to say build your network, but you may be somewhat of a shy person or you may be new to a company. If you cast your mind back to when you first joined Investec and share with us how you built that network, Cam.
Yeah, I'd say for newcomers that you've got platforms like LinkedIn, which are fabulous with connecting and staying in touch with people. Attend events. I encourage people to go to as many events as they can, meet new people, be brave enough to go up and introduce yourself and share something that's memorable about yourself that's relevant to the event. Stay in touch with people, catch up with them over a coffee, wherever you can, meet up in person. It creates so much more sort of tangible relationship and memorable experience when you can spend time one-on-one.
Absolutely. I know, Victor, you kind of just touched on having coffee with people, but I know you also talk about stepping out of your comfort zone being essential for growth. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll say stepping out of your comfort zone is absolutely paramount for growth. I like actively try to seek out diverse experiences, and one good example of that is like volunteering experiences. So in our team, we try to do volunteering at least once a year or so,
Hmm.
and at Investec, you get at least 2 days off to just go do volunteering, and it's a great way of meeting new people and just yeah, meeting new people and just stepping out of your comfort zone. So yeah, I'll say yeah, volunteering is one of those aspects you can use.
Yeah. And Margaret, do you have any tips for building your network?
Definitely. I think one of the key things which Cam just mentioned is, face to face is important. And I always tell people, walk the floors, walk the floors and actually talk to people in person. And what I would also say is greet people. Do the simple things, the little things, greet people. Remember small things about people, things that they care about. And what you realize is if you invest the time in getting to know people, it's going to grow your network. They're going to be more interested in you and they're going to be helpful. So I would always say do the simple things, being on time, saying hello, and smiling. Those are my tips.
Yeah. And coffee certainly helps as well to fuel strong networks. And that's one tip worth remembering for Investec. Um,
Victor's
so,
inviting me for a coffee next week.
oh, nice.
Surely.
um, so, Cam, we just go back to you. If I can just ask you, what role has mentorship played in your professional development?
Yeah, when I moved to the UK in the early 2000s, I had no family or friends here at the time, and so my surrounding was everyone that I worked with. So the I looked to my mentors for guidance and how to develop my career, how to build my network, guide myself through investment banking, and I've changed roles a few times over the years, and I'd say looking to my mentors to help me make those jumps or give me advice has been critical.
And Victor?
I would say mentorship has been pivotal for me for my development since secondary school. Having mentors provides invaluable guidance and insights into navigating professional and personal landscape. So, as Margaret mentioned before, they advocate for your skills when you're not in the room, which I think is absolutely crucial for your career
Mm.
advancement. And again, it fosters personal growth and allowing you to learn from experiences from people that are more wise and older than you. So, yeah, it's crucial.
And Margaret, how has mentorship been important in your career?
It's been pivotal. I think it's one of the things that actually allows you to progress in your career. And I think one thing to remember is your mentors don't always have to be formal mentors. You also have informal mentors. So I think you need to look at, who are the people who are mentoring you informally and who are the people who are mentoring formally. And just to remember that mentorship is a two-way relationship, right? Everybody gets something from it. So what I would say is, don't stress too much if you don't have a formal mentor. If you actually just sit down and take time to think about it, you'll realize that chances are you have a lot of informal mentors too. And it's about making sure you use those relationships to help you work through what you need to do in your career.
Absolutely. And and for me, mentorship is sometimes listening to how somebody handles a conversation or a phone call or a difficult individual and soak all of those skills up for myself. So definitely just being present, really helps as well.
And it's
And
continuous learning. That's the key
absolutely.
thing. It's continuous learning.
Yep. So continuous learning, that's another phrase you'll hear a lot at Investec. So it's just about, that ongoing journey of acquiring new skills in various ways, informally and formally too. So thank you, everybody. How do you approach continuous learning in your career? If we can just keep on that topic and go back to you, Margaret, there.
I'm a bit of a nerd, so I read a lot. But what I would say is be interested, be inquisitive, and ask questions, And I know it's difficult, especially if you're starting off your career and you're thinking, should I really be talking to that person? But I think the one thing I think you quickly learn at a place like Investec is you can ask the question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. You know, there's a question for a reason. And I think what I would recommend is if you're interested in it, read about it, understand it, go find people who know about it and ask them questions, and they will help you along the way. So that's what I would say, that helps you get to the next milestone.
Great advice. And Victor, what about you?
I try to challenge myself by stepping out of my comfort zone at least once a quarter. And for me, it's usually presentation. So what I did recently was I volunteered to present in front of at least 50 people on a transaction deal that I just recently completed. And as you can imagine, it was very nerve-wracking in front of people, but ultimately improved my presentation skills. I had to repeat it at least 3 times, and I just felt more confident in what I was speaking to. And as Margaret mentioned, the power of asking questions to facilitate learning is invaluable. Reaching out to knowledgeable colleagues and just getting the insights on things, and yeah, just put yourself out of your comfort zone. And once you do it, you will feel much better about having completed it.
Absolutely. And Cam?
Yeah, for me, I'd say it is a daily thing, both on and off the job. It's about that continuous learning. It's about learning from others, asking questions, taking feedback on board, and looking at where you can make changes to develop, to adapt ourselves in our roles. And I think Investec is great for doing that. We have a culture around providing feedback on a regular basis to our colleagues and taking things on board. More formally, working my coach and undertaking all the formal training that we have available here at Investec keeps that loop of continuous learning.
Absolutely. And I like what you said also about feedback. Learning how to take feedback is a process, and also being able to act on that as well is really important. Now, when we come to actually, talk about banking and the finance sector, there are a lot of emphasis on client facing roles, but we know there are many other roles that are necessary, to make the company what it is. So what other roles do you think people could consider in financial services other than the client facing typical roles?
I like this question.
Yeah,
It's like my favorite question.
yeah.
I think traditionally when people talk about financial services, everybody thinks about the suits are out there winning business. But if you actually bring it down to what do, banks allow, or financial service institutions, they allow people to move money around. And to do that, you need the people who execute that, right? And that's where the operational roles come into play. That's where your risk roles come into play. That's where your compliance roles come into play. I saw a question popping up about someone who says, I do law. That's where things around, your legal terms and conditions pop up into. So I think the risk roles actually operate, as in the operational roles operate the bank. You can sell everything, you can meet as many clients, but you need someone to execute it. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of senior people in banking have done both. Just if you look at in our bank, our current CRO, which is our chief risk officer, used to be in the front office, and then he was the COO, and he was the CFO, and now he's the chief risk officer. And people move, a lot of senior people in many banks actually move between what we call back office and front office roles. So I wouldn't look, I wouldn't not consider them because they're a great career path. And one of the key things I always remind people is if you actually do spend a little bit of time looking at where the regulators have gone in terms of what they care about in financial services, a lot of it now is about the operational roles. There's a lot of regulation around how we operate as banks. So I think they're great careers. I think, they're brilliant. I've made a career of it. I didn't start off in financial services, but here I am.
Thank you so much, Margaret. And what do you think, Victor?
Yeah, I recommend trying to get a great understanding of different roles in financial services, so shadowing different people. I know when people talk about financial services, the most familiar name that comes up is always investment banking or trading. But I think there's loads of interesting roles, such as asset management, private banking, and even fund finance, um, which is what I work in. So, as Margaret mentioned, take compliance for example. You get a lot of different touch points within the bank, work with different desk in the bank, and it's a very important part of the bank as an increasing risk conscious world. So, and these roles are also technical in their own nature and will give you the various different skills. And as Morgan mentioned, our CEO, or I think she said CRO, but our CEO worked in risk and credit before she became the leader of the bank. And so it's all part of the journey. So the role you might start with is not necessarily the role that you end up with. And you just have to look at the skills that you will get from different roles, even if you're in back office, middle office, or front office. It's all part of the journey and what you get from that. So yeah.
Thank you. And Cam, do you have any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, in addition to the roles mentioned by Margaret and Victor, there's roles in marketing, in human resources, which are critical to the running of the bank. And the skill sets that you get from those roles are also transferable to other businesses in different sectors. These roles, while they're not client facing, they have many internal stakeholders. They're very important to what we do as a bank, and they ultimately report into senior management and the leadership team. And so could provide you with a long, interesting career path that is slightly different from the pure client-facing roles.
Thank you. So hopefully that gives people online today some ideas of some roles that they could do in financial services. At Investec, we talk a great deal about our people having an entrepreneurial spirit, and that comes from us being founded, by the entrepreneurs over 50 years ago, and we have a very strong entrepreneurial belief. So, how does working at Investec bring out your entrepreneurial spirit, Margaret?
I guess for me, it's more around the freedom to operate. I do like, being accountable for stuff. I want to, design my work and to own my work. And I think we allow our teams to actually go off and find the solutions and implement them, and we don't limit ourselves in our roles. It's not stringent and very hierarchical. If you have a great idea, if you think you can help to solve something, go for it. And I think that freedom to operate allows you to be involved in many things, which is quite great. So you learn a lot more because you actually can go around and help people or ask people to help you.
Absolutely. And Victor?
Um, I would say it's mainly Investec's flat structure. So they encourage you to take responsibility beyond your role. So, for example, I engage directly with clients as the analyst, which you usually don't get to do in other places. So the directors here promote a culture of initiative, allowing me to pursue various projects without any bureaucratic obstacles. So again, this is a culture that does nurture my entrepreneurial spirit, so enabling me to explore different opportunities while the bigger and more hierarchical firms may not allow you to do so.
And Cam?
Yes, so in my role, I work with many growing businesses, quite entrepreneurial in their nature, and they touch multiple parts of Investec's offering, which is quite exciting for them and for us because you see there's an alignment of culture there. There's on both sides a natural hunger, drive, and it's a really fun environment to work in, echoing what Margaret and Victor had said.
Thank you. So that's really very interesting. You're all clearly enjoying, successful careers in this sector, and it's interesting that you've also arrived in your roles at Investec by different routes. So what I'd like to ask now is, what advice would you give to somebody starting their career in financial services? We may have people online today who are thinking about moving into the sector or pivoting in. Victor, could you go first with any advice that you have?
Um, I have mainly three advice. So I recommend just, exploring and getting exposure to various finance practices and identify your interests. And you can do that by just, speaking to different people. Um, you know, again, that's where networking comes into it. Again, having coffee chats with different people and just identifying. And I always tell people like banking is loads of different practices, from investment banking to trading to private banking to asset management. And most people don't know what these other things are, but just speak to
Mm,
someone and explore what that is. And additionally, I'd say actively participate in different projects, go to conferences, analyze deals or present your findings, and just establish who you are and be vocal about what you want. Yeah.
thank you. And Margaret?
Try everything. Just go off and try everything. And the reason I say that is I think, there are some people who know exactly what they want to do in life. I envy those people a lot. And then there are other people who are not quite sure what they want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do, my suggestion is try everything. The worst that can happen is you figure out you don't like it. And that's not a train smash. But when you try everything, you learn stuff, and all the bits you learn will help you in your career further on. And they become relevant as you grow more senior in your career because you can talk to different people about their subjects and people value that. So I would say try everything.
Thank you. And Cam, do you have any advice?
Yes, I'd say be bold, talk to people, and explore lots of options of figure out what you really enjoy, and then develop your own pitch, a pitch for yourself. So it enables you to network better and just keep networking. Find a good mentor and just keep going around with talking to people.
Thank you. Um, yeah, thank you for those handy pieces of advice. Sorry, excuse me. So we're running out of time. So I do want to start looking at some questions from the audience. But before that, sorry, I've got one last question, which is, what skills do you think are essential for success in financial services?
Yeah, maybe I start here, which is
Yes, Cam.
depending on your role. I'd say having a technical mindset and attention to detail is quite important. Plus, the ability to develop relationships. We've talked a lot about people networking and relationships through this panel discussion so far, and it goes without saying that you need to have plenty of energy and resilience in this space.
Thank you. And go, Margaret.
I would say an ability to count. We are, we are, counting people's money. So I think that's key as a starter. But actually, on a serious note, I would say an ability to connect with people. I think one thing to remember about financial services is we mostly sell an intangible product. Yes, we can touch, the cash, but apart from that, the money in your bank, and stuff like that is quite intangible. Your mortgage is, you see the house, but the mortgage itself is intangible. And so you need an ability to connect with people. You need to be able to build relationships with people because it's trust that gets you far in this industry. If you can connect with people, if people trust you, they're willing to invest their money with you. They're willing to bank with you. You're gonna be the first people they call when they have a problem and they need someone to solve. So I think back to what Cam said and what Victor said, it's all about relationships.
And Victor?
Yeah, just to echo what everyone else has said, there's key skills that are given like dedication and a strong work ethic in this industry. But I do believe like the technical skills can be taught on the job. So it's not a prerequisite. And then as Margaret and Cam said, it's a people orientated industry. So you need to be able to be collaborative with different and diverse personality types and kind of be likable. And that's going to help you in fostering strong relationships. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you all again. So now we are going to move to taking some questions from the audience. Bear with me one moment.
Imani,
Oh yes.
I've seen a
Go.
few questions around moving from different industries. I'm
Oh
happy to take
yes.
that
You're a
if
good
that
one
helps.
to take that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think there was Georgina who said she's in law. There's Ruby who said she was in construction and engineering. Forgive me if I mispronounce your names. You can correct me later. Enolia, who said she's doing mechanical engineering, and Gauri, who's working for the FCA, and I think did an MBA with Bays, which used to be CAS, which is where I did my MBA. So he gets a special shout. He or she gets a special shout out. I think the reality is you can get a role, and I wouldn't limit myself by thinking that you can't. And I think it's about figuring out your strategy about how do you get a role in financial services. I come from aviation, so if you want to talk to me about planes, I get very excited, and everybody here knows I get very excited about airlines and planes. But I moved, after spending almost a decade in aviation. And what I've learned is, first of all, don't believe everything the recruiters tell you. Most recruiters will say you don't have current financial services experience because it's a difficult sell for them. It's not about
Mm.
you not being fit for the industry. That's the first thing. Second thing is there's so many transferable skills from different industries. I'll just give a simple example of myself. My current role, I think, was put up is operational resilience. And that's all about making sure that the bank works when there's disruption. Very transferable. I think if I say to most of you, has anyone been delayed on a plane? Has anyone had a delay at Heathrow or Gatwick? Most people say, yes, I know what you're talking about. And the concept is managing disruption and managing your customers. It's the same concept, it's just being done in two different industries. So I will say it's possible. I think Georgina's in law. I mean, we have a lot of lawyers here. We've got our general counsel, who I think is one of the most brilliant minds I've ever come across in the world. And we've got lawyers in most front office teams who work with the front office teams for their very specific technical detail. We've got lawyers who work with the various back office teams. So we have lawyers who specialize in what we do, like third party contracts with us in the back office. So there are lots of opportunities. It's about taking the time to find them. Anything in construction, I will say, I think Cam might be better able to speak to this, but we have a real estate team, who work with various companies and people who are building things. So there are careers, and, I think someone said they're in public sector, they're working for the FCA. I work on a lot of reg projects. Believe me, if you've worked for the regulator, we want to know you, because then you can tell us the inside story. So I wouldn't be put off. There is always a way, but you've got to work your network. You've got to be willing to, walk, knock on doors. You might get a lot of no's. Don't listen to them. Just keep going and it will happen. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you. That's great. We do
Can
have
I
a question. Sorry,
Could
go.
could I just add to that? I think that is all solid advice, Margaret. But I'd say to the individuals is also think about your experience, think about your skill set that you have gained through your various pieces of work, whether it's law, whether it's the mechanical engineering. There will be core pieces of your experience that's relevant to finance, that's relevant to various jobs within Investec, and then retell your story in a way that is understandable for a bank, and position yourself and mold yourself so that people understand your value add. And there are roles, like Margaret said, there's roles across the bank that could fit into your experience. And you could be really valuable. I think, we have people, like myself, I come through a very traditional route, but actually coming in with an engineering aspect, you could fit into our project finance team, you could fit into our industrials team, and you come with that relevant sector detailed knowledge of how those businesses operate that could be valuable to our clients.
Thank you, Cam. Um, there was a question I think that could be relevant to what you just answered from Peter. And how do you best structure and build and adapt your elevator pitch on your CV and at networking events? How do you make yourself, as well as your skill sets and your experience, relevant and memorable?
So I'd say, it's great to show up to these events and it's great to, be bold and go and talk to people, but actually spending some time before working on what is it that makes you special. Ask yourself a few questions. If you met somebody, what would you like to know about them that's going to be interesting? And actually write it down. I know it is quite nerdish, because write it down about yourself rather than just following a CV format. Actually write the key characteristics about yourself that makes you who you are, what makes you stand out. And then think about a few examples through your life, whether it's in sport you've done, extramural activities, volunteering, that makes you special and will make you memorable, and then use that to develop. We don't have our elevator pitch day one. Even our clients don't have their pitches ready day one. It takes work. It'll develop as you network, but when you have something that's a basis and you try it out, you can work and adapt that over time.
Um, can I add to that? I think one of the best pieces of career advice I ever got was know what you're good at. And it's very important to know what you're good at. And then as you develop your elevated pitch, what Cam's been talking about, focus on those things, because that's always going to be valuable for someone, you know, and and you'll find over time as you go throughout your career that a lot of the roles you have that thread of the one or two things that you excel at, right? And I know that a lot of feedback centers on this is what you need to develop, these are your learning points, which is brilliant, and we all need to work on them. But do you know what? If excelling on what you're good at is what also propels you. So take the time, as Cam said, to think about, what is it that I'm really good at and what is it that I enjoy, and that works. I enjoy puzzles. And what I figured out is all my roles involve, solving complex problems, because in my head, I'm thinking about puzzles. And as a kid, all I did was puzzles. I like a puzzle. I like sitting there, leaving it there for days and days. So think about what you're good at. Think about how you can use that to develop your elevator pitch, and then work on it. Practice it with friends, with your family, in front of a mirror, in the park, when you run, and it will eventually come to you.
Thank you, Margaret. We have a question from Jonathan. What were the insights you gained from your early career about the skills and requirements that helped you transition into your first leadership or managerial role? Tough question.
I'll go first. um, I think technical skills are learnable. And are teachable. So that, you can teach people technical skills. What is more difficult to teach people are the soft skills. It's the charismas, it's the gravitas, it's the being present, it's the connecting with people. And I think if you want to move into leadership within any organization, and particularly in financial services, I think it's quite important to work on that, because the more you work on that, the more you develop your ability to connect and build relationships. The reality is we're all human, right? We all make mistakes, and sometimes we say things out of turn. But what's key is having that integrity and the ability to identify, that self-reflection, identify that, and maybe I didn't do that quite right, I didn't say that quite right, and going back and working on those things. So I would say work on the soft skills. The soft skills are key for leadership in any industry, and particularly financial services.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
would I would echo what Margaret's saying as well about the soft skills. So for me, being quite early on in my career, I'm quite an introverted person, especially at work. I don't really speak up as much as I would like to, but it's something I've been working on a lot more. And what I've realized, even though you could be the hardest working person in the bank and doing your work and closing as many deals or whatnot, but if people don't know what you're doing, you're kind of invincible. So one piece of advice I've always got is just to speak about things I am doing, or just speak up a little bit more. Even though for me it just feels like, why do you need to know what I'm doing? It's just more for people to know who you are and what you are doing, and just gives you more of that personable touch and eventually after a while you become more comfortable doing it. And before I knew it, I didn't realize that was a soft skill that I had to work on. But it just becomes second nature now. And right now I think I'm doing quite well at it. But again, the only way I found out by myself was through asking for feedback. And I think asking people for feedback, people in your personal life, your professional life, for feedback on how you're doing, and asking for honest and critical feedback will go a long way. And then try to implement those steps to making sure you achieve or you get past that feedback. So yeah.
Thank you. Victor, can I just stick with you? We have a question saying, I am a product manager in the fintech sector, and I want to better understand finance as a person with a background in biochemistry. Are there any platforms that I can learn from?
Oh, any platforms? I was just
Well,
gonna make. Uh, I was gonna make a joke about ChatGPT, but no. There are many platforms. I would say one thing I was gonna add was that you could do different like qualifications. So one thing that I do recommend is like a qualification like in the CFA or this KAIA exams, which is like a chartered investment advisory exams, just getting yourself up to speed with the financial jargon that you will need in the financial industry. You might not need all of it in these books. They're like six large books that you have to learn and pass the exam, but you don't really need to know of it. But if you get started and just getting to know the basics of that, they teach you a bit about the industry. They teach you a wide range of different desks in the industry, and just getting to know that base knowledge and see how that marries up with whatever you're doing in biochem or fintech and how that links. I think it will be valuable for you transferring over from biochem to
Mhm.
finance in the future.
I'm
So
gonna
yeah.
I'm going to add a few things. It's. I know we think of platforms, but I think sometimes doing the simple things. I would recommend, first of all, if you can, get access to the FT and just read the FT. It's got everything in there. It's got sections on biochemistry from a financial perspective. It's got pharmaceuticals. So if you can get access to the FT, the Economist, and start reading them. If you don't have access to those, one of the best programs is on Sky, Ian King at 1 o'clock each day. And he has a lot of financial sector people who come on it, and they talk about a lot of relevant things in terms of financial services that we're going through. So, and I think we have colleagues who go and speak on that show at 1 o'clock on Sky TV, Sky News. I think usually a couple of days a week is Ian King. So, also just use normal media where they break, the little business report on the BBC or Sky, and the more and more you hear about it, it becomes easier to learn about it. And I know that sometimes people think they have to do these big courses, which are great if interested. But sometimes remember, financial services goes down to human needs. It's about buying homes. It's about companies running so that they can give us products. So just engage in the normal media as a starting point if you're not from that industry. And once you know, then you can move to the more complex training things. Is the advice I would give.
Great advice, great advice. And we also have a question around AI, of course, which is how best do we utilize AI in financial services? And are there AI replacement concerns for roles in financial services?
Am I taking that? Okay.
Go ahead, I see.
Fine. AI is brilliant. And first of all, I would always say to people, don't fear it. It's not going to replace humans. That's the first thing. What AI is going to help us in financial services, and we started using it, is to help us do things faster. That's what it's going to help us to do. And in the same way, we've seen many tools across our bank which we're looking at. It's going to help us code faster. It's going to help us simulate things faster, like if we're doing stress testing. So I don't think there are any concerns around AI replacing roles. We just have to do our work differently,
Mm.
and it allows us to become more efficient and actually spend more time with our clients. So previously you would spend more time trying to analyze the client data to understand what's going on. If you build something with AI which can give you the report, then you can actually spend more time talking to the client as opposed to do the analysis. And that's what AI allows you to do. And I always like to remind people, AI has been here since the 1950s. It's not new. The only difference now is it's accessible on your phone because ChatGPT made it accessible on your phone. AI has been used in medical science since the early 2000s for cancer treatment. And there's something called IBM Watson where they actually develop personalized medication for cancer. So it's actually a positive. And I wouldn't fear it. I would actually embrace it. I would understand how it works. And, hopefully it could make sometimes, all those bots when you call the bank and it's a bot talking to you and all you're trying to do is to get past that bot so you can talk to a person. Hopefully AI will allow us to make those services a little bit better. At least that's my view of AI. But I have a tech background, so I will always look at it as a positive.
And I'd say for our roles in financial services, it's learning what's available because it's so powerful in terms of what we could do in various aspects, whether it's trading, whether it's risk assessment, whether it's actually some of our front office work that just helps us do some of our modeling and our valuation. And it's figuring out in our specific roles, how can we use AI to support us to be more efficient, to be more consistent, and for us to genuinely spend more time with our clients.
Thank you. We have a few more questions. I am an economics teacher and I'm currently trying to upskill. Any advice? Currently considering the FMVA.
This is when you wish Phil was on the call, right? Our chief economist. I think, I'm not in the economics department, but I think there is information out there around, what's going on in the economy. So I think one of the things is just, first of all, start understanding macroeconomics. And you're an economist teacher, so you know this better than me and the micro stuff. I think that's what I would say. I know that a lot of our economics team use details that come out of the government, information repositories around what's going on in the economy. So I know that's a good place to look at economic forecasts, and it's the office of budget something, the one which keeps the government honest. I think understanding those bits, and I would also just advise connecting with people in financial services who do those types of roles. I think that's the best thing, because at least they can give you better advice on what the right thing is and what is interesting and where you should focus. So I would say work your network, find someone in financial services who's an economist, and make friends with them.
You can also, I suppose, you could go and look up some of these people who are economists at the various banks, and LinkedIn is great because you can look up what is their background, what are their skills, where have they, what various things have they signed up for, what's their accreditation, and you'll find some commonality, and then you can do some research on what is relevant for you to appropriately upskill yourself, because it is taking being an economics teacher, you probably have a lot of knowledge there. Is fitting in the right gap between where you are today and where you want to get to, or the next logical step to where you want to get to.
Thank you, Cam. And for those of us in the earlier stages of our careers who already have a finance background, how would you recommend we stand out in a pool of applicants with similarly strong CVs and technical skills? Yeah.
I would say, my journey is a bit different just because I studied geography at university, which is quite unusual for getting into a typical finance role. But I would say looking at what you do outside of just the technical, so your extracurriculars, like I loved like volunteering and being a mentor to secondary school kids, and gaining skills from that, and all of those were transferable skills, which I all mentioned on my interview. And I think that's what the execs liked about me in terms of that go-getter spirit and entrepreneurial spirit. So I'll just say, just try to do stuff, extracurricular stuff that makes you stand out, and then marketing those transferable skills that apply to finance.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what's going to make you stand out, because everyone has the technical skills and that can be learned with the job. But what makes you you and what makes you unique, and then marketing that.
Thank you. And then back onto mentorship. Are any of you mentors for others formally? And how do you yourselves find a mentor?
Oh gosh, yes. So I mentor through various organizations, through Investec and outside Investec, and I would say finding a mentor sometimes who's outside the industry you want is quite useful. So if you are outside financial services and you want to be in financial services, having a mentor within financial services is, a good idea. And I think the second part of the question was, how do you yourself find a mentor? Um, it goes back to the same thing, relationships. A lot of the people who've mentored me throughout my career, I've met them through work, I've built relationships with them, and then over time I've said, oh, do you mind helping me with this? And then that's how they've become my mentor. Or where you get feedback and you're told, oh, you need to develop in this. And what I've then done is looked out for people who are actually good at it and then approached them and said, look, this is what I want to learn, this is why I want to learn, and this is why I want to learn it from you. And 99% of the time, people say yes, because people like being valued, especially for things they're good at. So I think my advice is don't forget your informal mentors, but it takes effort and time to find those formal mentors. You've got to invest the time and the effort, and it's not going to come to you on a silver platter. You've got to put in the effort.
Thank you, Margaret. And how should we approach our job searches in finance? Should we prioritize ideal jobs over institutions? Also, are there any particular careers websites to visit?
Do you want to repeat that one? So,
yeah, how should we approach our job search in finance? Should we prioritize ideal jobs over institutions? And are there any particular careers websites that you may recommend?
can I pass this to Victor?
Yes.
All right.
um, I would say going through my process, I remember like just thinking about the large institutions as the be all and end all. Your JP Morgans, your Goldman Sachs, the guys that are the most marketed. But having been in the industry for 6 years, I think the actual job and the desk that you're going for is absolutely key. Um, you could go for the shiniest toy at Goldman Sachs and it might be the best, but when you get there, it's not all that it seems to be. So I'd say go for what you are interested in, a company that gives you the correct culture and work-life balance and the correct people who are also hard workers, but also able to, take their foot off the gas when they need to. So I'd say, yeah, go for the correct role and not necessarily the correct company, and look at the culture of that place because that's um, what drives and makes people stay. In terms of websites that you can use, I can't remember off the top of my head right now. I remember there was one website I used to use back in the day, but there's loads of resources. Even in the BYP network, I'm sure they provide a lot of resources to for roles.
I think just in terms of websites, if you go onto the institution, so if you pick a bank and you go onto their careers site on their website, you can probably find a lot of roles that they have listed. My advice, I think, my advice, in addition to what Victor and Margaret said, is try and meet someone in some of these institutions, whether it's in the ideal role you want to get to or in some in a role that is tangential to it, and get an idea of the culture, the people, and the space. And maybe, they could even introduce you to somebody else in an area closer to where you want to get to.
Thanks, Cam. And LinkedIn is also, a really good resource to build your networks. Try and get in with those people that work at those firms and connect with them. Don't just leave it to chance. Apply and then, get in contact with the person. Get your face out there as well. I have a really interesting question around how important do you think it is to be part of a corporate African company in the West? And what are the pros to that, or even possibly the cons?
This got me very excited. It got me very excited. I thought, yes. Look, I think what makes us unique and different is the fact that we have an African heritage. And I think it's important where we are actually a UK company, but with an African heritage, and that's how we position ourselves. And I'm sure most of you have read about us. And if you haven't, please go onto our lovely website and look at our beautiful zebra, and everything out of the ordinary that we do. And I think what makes my view, I think the pros is we're memorable. People will always remember us. If you say Investec and you talk about the zebra, people go, oh yes. And if we talk about the sports sponsorships we do, people then remember. So I think that gives us brand awareness. I think it means that we think differently from our competitors. And I think that's very, very important because of the client type we're after. We are different, we're looking for a different client type. I think it allows us to deliver to our clients in a different way. We don't treat our clients, in the same cookie cutter approach, right? We actually invest the time to know our client, understand what makes them tick, because every organization is different, every human being is different, and people want to know you're going to care about them. I think it makes us super competitive because obviously, some people might not know us. So, we have to go out and win more business. We're not a big Barclays or a big HSBC. So we actually have to work a little bit harder to get those clients. We have to, invest more time in it. But in my view, I think it makes us, first of all, having an African heritage and being one of the, I wouldn't say smaller banks, but smaller than the big banks. It makes us very, very competitive. And we are unique and we can help you with very complex things. And we will go out of our way to help clients with those. At least that's how I view it. The cons are, I think the cons are, some people might not have heard of us, but when they hear about us, they will remember us. That's what I would say. I'm looking at Cam. What are your thoughts?
I think the additional to that is the culture that comes with that corporate African business that we have within Investec that is differentiated. I mean, it's a great place to work. Margaret and I were talking about it yesterday. Even though we've sat in London for the last 20 plus years, working in Investec, it feels a little bit more like coming home, but still
Same
within
here.
this financial services city that we live in. But it's the culture and values that align with who I am, and actually that means that I'm committed to work for this business in a certain way because it's very enjoyable to be here. And that makes us better in terms of our roles, how we deliver this business to our clients, and we have much more buy-in from the employees across all of the teams.
Thank you. Really great question. And we can just pivot back to the idea of mentorship. We have a question around how would you recommend maintaining relationships with senior professionals that you don't interact with regularly, whilst also ensuring that you're providing value to them, as we were speaking about earlier.
So I think it's when I was in fintech, I was doing a sales job essentially, and sort of maintaining relationships and cadence of those relationships are really really important. Is thinking about what could you say to this person that's relevant, and pick a cadence that's useful for you, whether it's once a month or every couple of weeks. What could you say to this person that would be interested? If you see something in the news that is relevant to their business line, you share it and share some thoughts that you have that's specific, that makes you memorable, makes you relevant. And then at the time when you do want to catch up with them for a coffee, they may be more amenable to it because they've heard from you for over the time. Obviously not too much, but over that time, keep in touch with these people.
Thank you, Cam. So I think we've got through a majority of the questions. We have one more. I'm at the dusk of my career in accounting contracting. What are my chances of moving into financial services as a newbie? Margaret, you kind of touched on that earlier.
I think I know one of the things I said is an ability to count. It is a key part of banking, and I think one of the most important teams, well, everybody is important, is our finance team. And the finance function goes across everything that you do in a bank. Every single front office team has an accountant. Every single back office team has an accountant. Then you have your group accounts team. Then you have your tax team. So I think when it comes to accounting, and I'm an accountant, I'm not quite sure if that's a positive or negative, but anyway, here I am. And I think one of the things I would say with accounting is don't look at it purely as just the accounting and I have to go into accounting. Accounting opens doors to a lot of things. And what you need to figure out is which bit are you interested in? And once you know what you're interested in, then you can chase that bit, because you can be a technical accountant, you can be a revenue accountant, a cost accountant, and all those functions are found in financial services. So I think what I would do is figure out which element of accounting you like, and then start focusing on actually how do I get into that type of accounting. And remember, again, accounting is a big transferable skill. It doesn't matter what industry you are, the principles are the same.
Lovely, thank you very much. We're going to look to close now. So that leaves me to thank you, Margaret, Cam, and Victor, for your refreshing views. I think you've given out some really good tips and advice today. And thank you to the audience. I hope you found our discussion helpful and inspiring. For me, some of the key takeaways are, relationship building, networking, mentoring, and just doing that continuous learning. And I also want to thank BYP for arranging today's webinar. And finally, if you'd like to learn more about Investec or find out about the details of our latest vacancies, the link to our page is on the BYP site and should also be live in the chat now, as well as our social media handles, which we'd love for you to follow. And that just leaves me to thank you all again. I hope you found these insights useful, and good luck with your careers.
All right. Thank you so much, Imani. Thank you so much, team from Investec. This was a really, really amazing session. I definitely agree with you, Gauri. Thank you so much, Margaret, Cam, Victor. It's a wrap.